I'm not apologizing for that. Miami covered. Miami had every chance to win. They snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. If that left tackle could have just given that guy a little bit more time, if Jaron Williams could have gotten rid of the ball a little bit quicker, I think it would have been a much different game, and I would have gone 1-3 instead of 0-4. Next.
Yeah, that Hawaii-Nevada thing. I'm still trying to figure out what your angle was there. I mean, help me out.
Yeah, Hawaii and Nevada didn't play, so next game.
Hawaii-Arizona.
Hawaii-Arizona.
All right. Hey,
gotta get the
Pac-12, you know.
Recognition too, contrary to popular belief.
First of all, I said Hawaii was going to throw it around the field. They did. They did a great job. Arizona was close. What was that? Khalil Tate got down to the one. It was like the Titans Super Bowl back in 99, 2000.
I remember that.
So close. Unfortunately, Kevin Dyson, Khalil Tate just could not get into the end zone there. Would have gone to overtime. I don't know if I would have liked Arizona's chances in overtime, but that wasn't as bad as it seemed either.
Yeah, and in fairness to me, Nevada and Arizona do border, do they not?
Probably. I didn't take geography.
Thank you very much. So I was in the general geography.
All right.
All right. So the other two picks. Let's move on. I want to get down to some other things. Will, how much time do you have there in Corvallis?
Yeah, I found a little place where I'm like tucked away. I'm a little hidden because it dips down. So let me get out of here. Oh, there's poop. Oh my gosh. Okay. If this is
on camera.
A great analogy for Pac-12 football, there's poop and literal poop in the stadium.
It appears that a cat has been loose in Corvallis. So
hey, so I'm just gonna stay here. You guys have me inside the stadium as long as you want. Again, I appreciate Oregon State being such hospitalitous guests. I went to go pick up a six-pack last night, and hey, I didn't come here to play school, okay?
He's an Oklahoma State fan. It's all right.
It was coming sooner or later. It was coming sooner or later.
Yeah, it was sooner.
Probably sooner than later.
All right, what else do you guys have for me?
If I could, let me just go ahead and throw a quick plug out there. Of course, You're inside of the stadium. You're giving Oregon State University all kinds of props right now. Beautiful campus. Awesome stadium. I've never been this close to it, honestly, and I've watched a lot of Oregon State football. That's a lot. But I would say that for folks that want to see a little bit more of what we do here, maybe want to have their own input in it, got a couple different levels you can be a part of the program, okay? We'd appreciate any patronage you can give. $5 tier, a $5 donation, okay? This isn't a telethon. $5 gets you a special short in the credits, okay? But $10, we go a little bit further. $10, we allow you to send us some questions on email, comments, raves, rants. It can just be trash talk. We'll pick some of them out as time allows, read those off, address them right away. It can be something like, you guys suck, you should go back to your day jobs. We'll do that, okay? Whatever. Yep. But $5, get you some credits. $10, send us your comments, your questions, whatever, okay? We'll take it. Now, we got all over Will there. We rode him a little bit. He did not rant on us. He didn't explode. He wasn't ugly with us. Nick Saban had a different take this week with the media. So I'd ask helpless Hermit there to speak to Nick Saban's rant this week. What did you think of that?
Honestly, I got to applaud the guy. I don't think there's enough coaches that'll go to bat for their players like Nick Saban will. Really, Nick Saban has a mindset of really kind of growing these young men into competent human beings who are able to own up to their mistakes and are able to better themselves. I think that Saban's got the right idea here. I think that you've got to give these guys a second chance. If you don't, like he said, they're going to end up right back in the problems, and they're going to end up in jail, or they're going to end up doing something even worse. I think that ultimately giving them that opportunity, giving them an outlet, and giving them constructive position to kind of better themselves, I think is the best way to handle it. And I applaud Saban for calling everybody out for it.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Ricky, did you get the same take from him?
Sorry, what?
Did you get the same opinion of it there?
I think it's pretty reasonable to say most people would agree with what Saban was talking about. It just makes sense, really. These are, I'm about the same age as these sort of athletes, and I can tell you firsthand, we can't be knuckleheads a lot of the time. So second chances are nice.
Would never believe that. Well, I kind of like the point there you made too. Bo, what was your point?
I was just going to say, I think we can all kind of relate. When we were in college, we did plenty of I know I personally did plenty of stupid things, out too late, chasing a girl, something like that. It just happens. You do something dumb, you regret it, and you've got to own up to it. Obviously, you've got to take responsibility for it. But if you're willing to put in the effort to get back in, your coach's good graces, your team's good graces, and you work hard to not do it again, shit, come on,
Yeah, exactly. The redemption is really the main focus of it. And
exactly.
I believe the original comments were about Muhsin Muhammad, a former player for Alabama. He got in trouble with a firearm possession, and a lot of people were calling for him to get kicked off the team. Saban decided to suspend him, or whoever it was who made the decision decided to suspend him. And now he had a successful NFL career. He's got children going to Princeton. I think we can all agree that in the end it turned out for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. The tales of redemption can be found just about every school, but Coach Saban, I think, is of a different breed, and maybe a breed that's kind of passed. How do you think, guys, that Dabo Swinney would have handled the question in a press conference? Bo, what's your thought?
I think that Dabo probably would have handled it at least in a similar vein. I think that Dabo's of the same sort of mindset of growing the team as a family and kind of, making guys own up to their mistakes, but teaching them how to deal with it and kind of working towards making them better. I don't think he necessarily would have taken it as hard as Saban did. Obviously, Saban's got that media persona that he's going to rear into them, as soon as he can. But, I think that Dabo probably is of the same mindset, give the guys a chance to redeem themselves and work themselves into the good graces of the coach.
Yeah. Now, not Dabo. What about Lincoln Riley? How does he handle the question?
I think Lincoln Riley has a pretty good stance on these sort of examples. He's probably among the same. Lincoln doesn't have the fiery attitude that Saban does, which could be something to be improved on. That's a little nitpick of mine, but Lincoln, at his heart, I feel he's got the same sort of thinkings, and he's got a good heart, really. The temperament is just the only difference I would see between the two.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I appreciate you guys' input there on everything. I mean, I love the guy. I think he's a good football coach and everything. He's not without flaw. And the fact that he made some waves with some foul language in the meeting rubbed some people the wrong way. It's a dirty game with grown-up men playing it and grown-up men coaching it. So if you don't like the foul language, I don't know, maybe turn it over to Nicola or something Saturday. I don't know. That's my opinion.
That may be the choice.
So we've talked about Alabama a little bit more. I want to finish up the Alabama conversation with the comparison that's floating around in social media and in the media in general about where Clemson is and where Alabama is and where everyone else is. So I'd like to get an outsider's opinion first. Let's go to the Big 12 and ask Ricky, what do you think about where Clemson and Alabama is versus everybody else in the country as we get ready to roll out week 1 here?
Well, a lot of people are predicting a Clemson versus Bama in the national title, of course. I think that's the general consensus is what's going to happen. Where that's really going to come into play, I think Clemson's going to have an easier chance to get there. They are going to have let's face it, the ACC right now isn't at quite the level of the SEC. Clemson's going to have an easier schedule. They'll get there. It would be some freak occurrence that would happen if they don't get there. Alabama, they've shown time and time again they can get there, obviously. That's really the only way where I can see this story changing is if Alabama maybe falls to a Georgia, maybe slips up to an Auburn, or maybe it gets a surprise by LSU. So really, I think that's really what people should focus on for this Clemson versus Bama story. Can Bama really get back there? Because I don't think anyone doubts Clemson can.
All right, the rebuttal from the Alabama side. Bo, what do you got?
I don't know if it's necessarily a rebuttal, but I agree that I think that Alabama's probably got a little bit of a more difficult schedule trying to get there. I still think though Clemson's got some hurdles they've got to get over. Next week with Texas A&M, that's going to be a hard game. Texas A&M gave them a run for their money last year, and I have every thought in my mind says Texas A&M could probably do it again, give them at least a run for their money. Trevor Lawrence this week kind of looked a little shaky. Maybe it was just nerves, first game back in a while. Threw a couple interceptions, but yeah. I think that ultimately looks human. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He looked human, as kids often do. I mean, Jesus, he's a sophomore, right? I mean, he can't expect him to be perfect, but I think that probably it'll be Alabama, Clemson. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for college football, because in my heart, I do think that these are the two best teams with some of the best players in the country. And I think that any sort of playoff game or any sort of playoff situation that doesn't have a Clemson and an Alabama fighting, duking it out. By Clemson and Alabama, I mean two best teams in the nation sort of situation. I think any playoff that doesn't have that is probably not going to be a very good playoff. You got to have that powerhouse versus powerhouse situation. And really, we're looking at dynasties. Dabo's now built it. He's kind of a perennial contender. Alabama's obviously built it, perennial contender. And so and we've got Georgia and Oklahoma knocking on the doors. And, they very well could pull an upset. I know as well as anybody how good Jalen Hurts is. And so I could see Oklahoma making a run for it and giving some people a scare. But I ultimately think it's going to come down to a Clemson Alabama national title right now.
Yeah, I like that diagnosis right there. It's hard to go against it when basically they've been the two main competitors, or the two only competitors in the national title game for 3 of the last 4 years, I believe. They were the two teams that played. Let's focus a little bit though as we start to shift a little bit away from Alabama. There's other people in this race as well, and I don't want to go into a full-on CFP breakdown right here, but if you guys had to pick two teams not named Clemson or Alabama to wind up in the national championship, Ricky, who do you got?
Well, I have to represent.
If you want to, man.
I gotta represent Oklahoma. Gotta have Oklahoma in. Other than them, that's gonna be tough. Michigan is a popular pick right now, but I don't think they're really gonna have it in them. Ohio State, I don't really have much faith in Day to get the job done. Okay. I'm going to go out on a sort of a branch here and go with Utah. I think Utah, if they can run the table convincingly enough, they could make a good case for the CFP.
Interesting about Utah, one of their guys after the game last night was quoted as saying that they're never going to beat us. Their team is poo-poo. So Utah's got the swagger thing going right now. I don't know. Bo, what do you say about it? If not Clemson, Alabama, who would the two teams be?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the Oklahoma pick. I think that they've got a lot of stuff, and Lincoln Riley obviously knows how to get it done over there. They really put together a good team. Defensively, obviously, they've still got a lot of questions. And I don't necessarily think you can win a championship without a solid defense. You don't have to have the best defense, but you got to have the ability to stop, dig down deep, stop when you need to stop. And I don't necessarily think Oklahoma's shown that they can do that yet. Now, the season's just starting. They may come out there, tear them up on defense for all we know. But I think if I was going to look at a real outside contender, obviously I'm going to say Georgia probably looks like third best team in the nation, if not, could knock off Alabama just as easily. But if I'm going to say somebody kind of a sleeper that I don't think a lot of people are giving a lot of credit to, I've heard a little bit of muttering here and there, and as much as it pains me to say it, I think Auburn's got a shot. Ooh. And here's why. I think that they've got a lot of talent up front. They've got a lot of veterans up front on the line. And in my opinion, really it's the line that wins you the game. I don't necessarily know, there's a lot of questions, as there always are at the beginning of the season. Is their quarterback going to, grow enough to be in that sort of position to where he's going to be up against a Trevor Lawrence or, looking up against a Tua and being able to keep neck and neck with those guys? I think he's got the talent to. I think Bo's got the talent to. I don't necessarily know if he'll be able to keep it there mentally enough to get there, but I think that sleeper contender Auburn could do it. And they've got a head-to-head with LSU. They've got some head-to-head games there that are going to look good to a CFP committee.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, and if they can knock off Alabama, shit, I don't know. You probably are walking your way in at that point. I don't know. But that would be my sleeper contender.
It's interesting that you picked them. My SEC championship games picked last week, and we kind of went through and picked our title game contenders. I had Georgia and Auburn rematching. As you know, this year the Georgia-Auburn game is moved way up in the schedule. They're playing it just in a couple, 3 weeks, actually. So those two will have a chance to recover from the potential loss, whichever one of them is the game, and go back up in the rankings, slide back up, prove themselves through the year. And so I had Georgia and Auburn in that. I've had them both in at 11-1. Auburn's loss, I believe, is probably going to beat Georgia during the regular season, but that they beat Alabama and they get in there. I think if that happens, your pick about them being in the CFP is spot on. That's really good. The Utah's a wild card for me, but I like them because I think they might have a schedule that could allow them to get there. And
I got to throw in a curveball every now and then.
Yeah. Well, it's still better than an Auburn pick, so we'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. The Alabama guy picking Auburn, that's a problem.
What do you guys take it for a second and tell the folks that are still on watching this? Thank you for still on and watching this, by the way. Tell them about the patronage tiers there. Ricky, you go on this one,
man. Sorry, I'm going to have to zone out for a second. You have to run that by me one more time.
Yeah, the patronage tiers. Would you mind give us those here for our folks that are watching right now?
So I believe if you would like to support the show and see more of this and greater things, maybe some more in-depth stadium tours, who knows what we might have. A $5 tier gets you a nice little shout out in the credits. And a $10 tier, I believe, is the one where you get a statement or question on the show, if I'm not incorrect. Yes, so $10. I gotta get into the groove here. A $10 tier, you get a message, a question, anything you want. $5 tier, you can get a shout out. So if you would like to support from the stands, please consider joining our Patreon.
Nicely done. You nailed it as always. And unfortunately, I have been calling you Ricky. I've got you confused with Ricky Martin is where I think where I'm going wrong here. You seem like a very talented guy, and so that's probably what's
I don't know if I'm talented as Ricky Martin. Maybe if I practice.
The guy's good. I mean, the music's catchy. I got to admit there. So it is Mikey.
Yes.
So everybody that's watching, you know, if there's comments you can post on this about the fact that I've been calling Mikey Ricky, I deserve whatever you give me on this.
I was waiting for you to catch on. I didn't want to call you out because I was going to see how long I could milk this one.
Well, you know, there's a good plan.
You definitely had the wherewithal to hold that one. I was sitting here thinking, damn, he's calling him Ricky.
Who is Ricky? There's no fourth person right now. Will left. He's in Oregon. You know?
If you're named Ricky and you want to be a part of the show, please consider helping us out.
We will accept a Ricky. We will accept a Ricky. Okay. So that's good. Good deal. I appreciate you throwing that little bump in there for us and everything. I want to have some fun with this. I'll let you guys run with it. I also want to throw my pick in, but I won't talk much. Talk about game of the week, okay? And Bo, will you tell us a little bit about what the game of the week is?
Yeah, obviously the game of the week is going to be the Oregon Auburn. Sorry, I've got Alabama on the brain again.
You guys have got to stop drinking this early in the afternoon. Okay, we all do.
Yeah, it's the Oregon Auburn game, and you know I think it's going to be a real powerhouse game. I think both these guys have really good teams. I think I think we were talking a little bit before the show, and Mikey mentioned that Oregon's got pretty much an all Pac-12 offensive line. And,
effectively, yeah. You've got Shane Lemieux, who is all Pac-12 second team, if I recall. You got some honorable mentions in Penei Sewell, Jake Hansen, and Calvin Throckmorton. And Dallas Womack's returning too. So really, it might be the best line in the Pac-12, if not one of the best. It might be one of the best offensive lines in the country, if not the best in the Pac-12.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's going to be a big part of if Oregon gets it done. They're going to really be the reason. I think, Justin Herbert, the quarterback, he's had maybe some consistency issues. I'm not exactly sure. I think the main reason that he came back for his senior year here is that he's not as accurate as some people would like to see him. I think he's got a lot of the talent. He's a big guy. I think he's 6'6", 240 or 235 maybe. I mean, dude's a big guy, and he's got a lot of talent and a lot of ability, but I think his completion percentage was 59% last season, which isn't really where you want to be. I mean, it's good. It's not amazing. It's good, especially when you've got some guys throwing 70 for a season. 59 is looking a little rough there. And so
Bar's
I
always
think,
getting set higher.
yeah, exactly. There's always somebody who's better, obviously, but with that, I think that he's going to have to really dig down deep and make some of those passes that he's been missing. And I think that the offensive line is going to give him the time to do that. Now, Auburn's defensive line is pretty tough too. Those are some big boys who really know how to get down and dirty and shove you around, get to the quarterback. I think they've got a lot of their returners too, and they've got some pretty solid defense. One of the better defenses in the country, I think, which is part of the reason why I think that they're a sleeper for the CFP. I think that as long as they can get it done, and if they come in, one of my biggest problems with Auburn, apart from just them being Auburn, is that they kind of come in. You never know what mentality you're going to get when you've got Auburn coming into a game. They're either going to come in with that killer mentality where they look like the best team in the nation, or they're going to come in with kind of a lackadaisical, oh, we've got this in the bag mentality, and they drop the ball against somebody who they could have easily beaten. And so one of the things that I think is going to be real important is if they come in with that killer mentality, making sure that they know that they're going to go in there, get the job done, and really just push Oregon around. And if they do that, hell.
Yeah, Bo, can I stop you a second there? You mentioned Auburn's killer mentality. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't. Mikey, does that sound a little bit like Oklahoma? I mean, Oklahoma, I think of Oklahoma as someone that can beat anybody on any given day, but some days they're just not interested. Am I making a bad comparison there?
That's a really nuanced question right there. I feel like, well, for Oklahoma, really, offense most often, I mean, almost always is going to show up. The rare occasion where it doesn't, there's usually some underlying consequence. I remember when Oklahoma lost to Iowa State a couple seasons ago. People were up in flames. Right. Oklahoma fans were ripping their heads off and running around. But really, I mean, you saw some injuries happening on the offense. You saw just a little. It just wasn't quite clicking together. Defense, I mean, that's a whole nother story. I mean, I could rant about the defense for the entire show length. I think everyone understands what's really going on there. So
well,
really,
I didn't mean to divert you too much there. I want to get your take on the Oregon-Auburn game as it relates to what the game of the week is here.
Right.
Sum it up.
Right. So, yeah, again, about the Auburn defense. Their defensive line is probably going to be as good in the country as Oregon's offensive line. On the defensive line, you got Derek Brown, who was All-SEC second team last year. You got Nick Coe, Marlon Davidson, Big Cat Bryant. All these guys are returning, and all these guys form a very formidable defensive line to face against. Really, where I see where people should really be paying attention, when Auburn takes the field for offense and Oregon's defense is out there, that's where you're going to see a lot of uncertainty, because Oregon's defense last year was decent. There was really not a whole lot of hubbub about it, but it was there and it was pretty good. This year on Auburn's side, we've got Bo Nix, a true freshman quarterback. He's dual threat. There's a lot of hype around him. A lot of people are going to be either praising him or convinced that that he's the reason why they lost the game. So really, when Auburn's offense takes the field, that's when everyone's going to start sitting up and watching, because we don't know what's going to happen there. Ultimately, I'm going to be looking for a battle in the trenches, and I think turnovers are going to be what makes or breaks the game. Whoever's going to get the most turnovers is probably going to win. And I know that's generally the case, but I think in this one, because you're going to have a really tough time moving the ball with this battle going on in between, you're going to look for turnovers to be the deciding factor.
Well, you guys save your pick for the win until our next segment here, which is our pick-em, okay?
Yeah, so, I didn't say who I thought was going to win.
I was getting a lean there. I was starting to feel a little bit of a lean there. I agree with you. It's really going to be an interesting tale, and we kind of think we know what Auburn's defense looks like. We kind of think we know what Oregon's offense looks like, but it's when the two units switch out. And you're looking at Auburn's offense, which is much derided. Gus Malzahn gets a heck of a lot of press about his style in the past and how now it seems like quarterbacks go there to die. Jarrett Stidham, for instance, looks like he's going to be the number 2 behind Tom Brady. But was he really ever prolific at Auburn? And this guy's supposed to be an offensive guru, right? So I want to see what happens there on it. But I want to jump to our next part. I know how our time is here and everything. We got some games we want to break down here. So Bo, take off for us with game one there, and I think it's Ole Miss and the Memphis Tigers.
Yeah, Ole Miss, Memphis Tigers. Memphis is a pretty solid team. I've got a feeling that Memphis is going to do well this year. But I just don't. Ole Miss has kind of been kicked around a lot lately. I feel like they've been losing talent. There's just not a lot going for them right now, and I think that they're going to kind of come in with a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. I think that they're going to want something to start the season right. I'm hoping that they don't come in there lackadaisically and just kind of let Memphis do whatever Memphis does to them. Yeah. And I think I'm going to go with Ole Miss. Maybe it's a little bit of an SEC bias. I'll own that. I'm an Alabama person, and I want Ole Miss to be better so that when Alabama eventually beats Ole Miss at certain points in time throughout the seasons, it'll make us look a little bit better. It'll make Ole Miss look a little bit, if Ole Miss looks good, then we look good because we're in the same conference, So I'll own the bias, and I'm hoping Ole Miss will pull it out.
Nicely done there. So I like them too, but I want to get Mikey's take on it. This is Ole Miss, Memphis. It's not too far from your neck of the woods, a little bit closer and everything. So I got to jump over the state of Arkansas, which we're going to forget about. Right. But it is the natural state. In fairness, what's your take on the game?
I think Memphis is going to come out swinging here. Last year, everything was gearing up to go their way. They got up to the conference championship, and they just couldn't pull through. So I think this year they're kind of feeling burned. They feel like, especially against a program like Ole Miss, while Ole Miss may not be the best team around right now, they're still a very competent program, in terms of football. So Memphis is really going to want to make a statement here. I think Memphis will pull through and make that statement. And I think that it's going to be very fun looking at Memphis and UCF in their conference and see how that battle ends up in the end. It's going to be a fun season.
Yes, it is. And we saw, I think UCF played last night. There was a game televised with players wearing their uniforms. The other team, I'm not sure, was at grade school level. So we know what UCF likely brings to the table. But they'll be playing Memphis, you say, in the conference title. Tomorrow, Memphis gets to prove their mettle against somebody from the SEC. I'm going to lean Ole Miss here, actually. I just think that they're going to rebuild a little bit this year. They lost some pretty big offensive contributors. Man, those receivers last year, even though Alabama hung like 600 points on them or something like that, Ole Miss's receivers were real. And if they'd had a healthy year, they would have been a better team. Defensively, I don't know if what they're going to have to do to rebuild that, but I think Ole Miss wins that. You guys, let's shift to the next one: Northwestern and Stanford. Mikey, what's your call here, man?
Northwestern and Stanford. A lot of uncertainty around this one. Northwestern had a pretty good season up this year, and Stanford didn't. So Stanford this year wants to make a statement. They not really make a statement. They want to show that things are moving the right way. So I think, in the end, I think Northwestern's going to pull through and, probably have a pretty decent season. I just don't have faith that Stanford can pull it together. Maybe it'll take one more year before we'll start talking about them really being up there in the Pac-12.
Yeah, Pac-12 is just a black hole. Bo, what's your thought?
Here's my thing with Stanford. I feel like there's always a lot of hype there, and they don't ever necessarily capitalize and kind of live up to what they've been hyped up to be. Sure. Sometimes they'll pull out a big win here or there, but ultimately I feel like it slips through their fingers when it really needs to. It really doesn't need to. And so I'm also with you. I'm going Northwestern. I think Northwestern's got a lot of fire coming into this season, and I think that they feel like, hey, we're finally getting a little bit of respect. We're doing some big things over here, and I think that ultimately they're going to come out and they're going to blindside Stanford. I'm saying 2 touchdowns.
Wow, 2 touchdowns, man. So you guys like Northwestern a lot. I'm going to be the dissenter here. I disagree with everybody on it. I think Stanford just has fundamental football down a little bit more. I like the way they coach. I like the way that they've had continuity in the program. And I think that type of continuity, big game against someone that's equally matched, means a lot. And what I'm getting at is the national title game last year between Alabama and Clemson. Ball players are all over the field. There's NFL players on both sidelines everywhere. the continuity that Dabo Swinney had built in that one big game against a team that matches up exactly with you made the difference and made the fact that Clemson that much better in the game. So for me,
yeah, I'd probably say Boise State by 7. They'll pull through. They want to come out swinging.
They always do.
Yeah, I'll differ with both of you guys. I'm going to take the Seminoles in Tallahassee. I think a lost state there would mean that Doak has gone dark. Oh my God, I just said it.
It would be a big loss there.
It would be huge, and I just think the Willie Taggart era was kind of just derailed a little bit last year. The coaching change wasn't just super smooth. Jimbo kind of left in the middle of the night, and so year one was a little bit odd. And I think that year two, things start to gel a little bit. Now, am I predicting them to win the ACC? If Clemson goes to another conference, maybe. Otherwise, they're a distant second, or a distant second in the division. So I'll definitely take Florida State in this one, but 1 or 2 points. They hang on for dear life. Very close. Now, the next game I want to cover is maybe off the list a little bit. Bo, who do you have as far as on our pick'em list there that you want to cover? And then I'll tell you what I think.
I think the next game that we've got is the OU Houston game.
Okay. We got to do that one. You go first. You go first, Bo, and then we're going to let Mikey do whatever he wants to do to Houston here, okay?
Yeah, I like Houston, not in the game, not winning, but I do like Houston here just as a team. I think that they've kind of got a little bit of a fire as well. A lot of these guys that we're talking about here kind of have that fire, raring to get that, upset. And I really do like that. I love seeing these kind of big upsets that, you're not expecting, even though, I'm an Alabama fan, I don't want to see Alabama get upset, but ultimately it's hard not to root for these little guys to just take down these big names. But I just don't think that anybody, knowing the talent that Jalen Hurts has, I just don't think that anybody's really going to beat OU apart from some of the bigger names in football. I know that Jalen Hurts is going to keep them real grounded. I know that he's going to be talking to those guys and making them really focus on just the next game ahead, same sort of way that Saban does. I just don't think, with Jalen Hurts leading that team, I don't think it's going to be difficult to beat Oklahoma, period.
I agree. Outside of Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, maybe one other. Oklahoma only loses if they want to lose. Mikey, your goal. You have the floor, sir.
OU all the way. It's going to be a fun game. I'm really excited. It's going to be my first game as a student here, so it's going to be really interesting for me. But I really what I'm wanting to watch is the defense. I know everyone's got a pretty good idea what the Oklahoma offense is going to be like. You got Jalen Hurts, you've got all the other people, Brooks, CD Lamb. It's going to be crazy. But where it's going to really be interesting is how this defense works out. I have faith in Grinch. I think it's going to work out. But first game of the season, probably going to be a little rough around the edges. It's going to be probably one heck of a shootout. From what I've been seeing, Houston's defense may be having some problems with depth or injury. I'm not quite certain on the details, but regardless, they're going to have to face the Oklahoma offense. It's going to be insane. So OU is going to, I don't know if they'll beat the spread. I think the spread, Vegas has got like 3 touchdowns or something. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think they'll have a pretty commanding win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 21 is probably the right number there. Probably you could err on the side of a lot more. OU is just in a different class than Houston. I just don't think that Oklahoma loses. Aside from those big 3 or 4 other teams that talent-wise match up and can meet them head-on player by player, they only lose if they want to lose. They want to lose to TCU. They want to lose to Baylor. They just quit on Kansas State. Whatever it is, they only lose if they want to. But let's jump around a little bit more. Who do you guys have next on your list here as far as our pick-em here? Because I'm thinking Oregon, Auburn, in the interest of time, we need to move on to that.
I think that's the number one right now.
I think that's the big
one. Let's move on to that in the interest of time. Mikey, take off there. What's your call on Oregon and Auburn?
All right, so I've already talked to an extent about what I think is going to happen neutrally, but in the end, I'm going to go for Oregon. I think Oregon's going to pull through. I'm not certain they will, but I have a pretty good feeling. Herbert and the offensive line, that alone is going to, do wonders for them. I don't think it's going to be a very decisive victory, probably about 3 or so points, but I think Oregon's going to do it.
And that trails what Vegas says right there. I think it's 3.5 right now, but of course we're not advocating gambling on this show. That's only.
Oh, of course not. No.
Bo, you talk it up. You've given us all the meat and potatoes there on Auburn and Oregon. What's your take?
Yeah, I think ultimately, again, maybe it's my SEC bias showing, but I'm gonna pick Auburn for this one. I just think that when you look at it, Auburn's offense is going to be better than Oregon's defense, and I think that Oregon's offense and Auburn's defense are roughly comparable. I think that Oregon's offense will be able to do some great things, but Auburn's defense is going to be able to really hold them back a lot better than what I think a lot of people are expecting. I mean, obviously the battle in the trenches is going to be the key, but I think that ultimately when you flip the sides, you've got Auburn's offense and Oregon's defense. I think Auburn's offense is going to be able to move the ball like the way that they want to. And having seen some of the highlights from Bo back in high school, man, he really knows how to sling the ball. He's got some talent, and I think that they'll be able to make use of a lot of it. He's elusive enough to where he's going to be able to extend plays if Oregon's getting pressure on him, and I just think that Auburn will be able to pull it out.
Yeah, good call there. I'm going to go with Auburn as well. Not really SEC bias, because generally I would rather pull for the minions of Satan than for Auburn to win. However, I believe Auburn does win it. And if you recall back 1 year ago, their first of the game season win over Washington. Everybody's very high on everything. Everything's going really well. They are literally one terrible injury or something like that away from being a team that might be at 10-2, 11-1, to being back playing Purdue again in a bowl game. So they got to be real careful about the overexcitement with a big win. I think they beat Oregon probably 8 or 9 points, actually, somewhere through that range. But over exuberance on the Plains has turned out bad at times. So take it with a grain of salt. What do I know? I've only been watching college football for 44 years. So, all right. So that's enough of all that right there. Bo, would you give us another, our listeners, our viewers, a little bit more of a plug about how they can make this show bigger and better?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a Patreon running, and I think there are 2 tiers of subscription right now. We've got a $5 tier where you kind of get a shout out in the credits. You'll be able to kind of, get your name out there, or do whatever you'd like. I guess we'll, give you a little nod there, here, or there. And if you get the $10, however, you've got us at your disposal to an extent. We'll read what you want. We'll say what you want us to say, whether that's not so nice to us, whether it's, you could be telling us to hop in front of a bus for all we know, but, we'll read it and we'll take our lumps if we need to. So give it a look. We've got it running, and we hope to grow this show and get bigger and better. So anything you guys can do helps us help you.
Yeah, absolutely. Putting that in there. And I do know that Will has promised that the largest patronage, he will do the show shirtless. So that's something, it's exciting to some of you. Some of you don't care. Some of you are like, I'd rather.
I've also heard rumblings of a From the Stands calendar that may be a thing. I don't know if I'll personally.
You gotta get though. You gotta get the funding.
I didn't want to mention it. You don't want to get people's hopes up. Kind of like all. No, I mean it's it can happen, but you gotta contribute.
Yeah.
Call now, okay? These people are starving. Call now.
What's the email? FromTheStands@gmail. Is that right?
FromTheStands@gmail.com. Hey guys, thank you so much, man. This has been a lot of fun again this week. Any last words or anything before you get out of there for the night?
Well, I think we still have one more segment to move on to, don't we?
You do, huh?
I think we still have our shots and chase.
That's what I was doing. I was trying to forget it, trying to get out of it. You guys take the lead. I'll watch.
Yeah, shots and chasers. So for those of you who have either seen your team play, won't be able to see your team play, don't want to see your team play, or if you just have some reason to watch football, we have laid out what we think are going to be the most interesting games for either a neutral fan or just a fan of football to watch over this coming Saturday. We've got 2 games per time slot, the Shot and the Chaser. So right now, I think we'll kick it off. Sorry, Bo, do you want to start off the 12 o'clock Eastern?
Yeah. Well, I think. What is our shot for that one was the change game, wasn't it?
Yes. No, that's the Chaser.
Oh,
I've got the list in front of me. I guess I'll just go for it. 12 o'clock Eastern, we're going to start out with Ole Miss at Memphis. Either one of you want to make a quick comment on that game? We're going to sort of just touch on these real quick. And
I'll make a comment. I'm not watching it.
I'll probably watch it just because I got to have something on,
I mean, I'm probably going to watch it. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays into their conference and whether Ole Miss is going to be a competent team this year or not. So we'll be able to tell a lot from this starter. After that, we got the Chaser, Boise State at Florida State. Any quick little tidbits about that? Let's go with Bo first or something.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to be watching that one because I just made a really bold prediction there with Boise State. So I really going to be watching that one and hoping I'm not having to eat my words.
I'm going to be watching that one because I want to see if by tomorrow afternoon there's any weather effect. I'm a big fan of the weather, so I want to see if there's anything going on there. Probably not by the end, but maybe by the end of game time. So that's kind of my thoughts on otherwise I'm disinterested.
All right. Next up, 3 o'clock Eastern, we're going to have Virginia Tech at Boston College as the Shot. For me, I think it's going to be I think it might be a little bit of a shootout. It's going to be an interesting game. Don't really know a whole lot about the teams coming into this season, but I think we can all agree it might be pretty fun to watch as a neutral fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like VT, so I'll probably be watching that one pretty closely.
Yeah, I think this is a big year. As I mentioned in the last week's show, VT has got to prove a little bit, but their longtime defensive coordinator fixing to resign and everything at the end of the year. So they're kind of my other pick to give Clemson trouble this year. I know people are looking at Syracuse.
I can see it.
But the Hokies are the one that I think, yes, the ones that lost to Old Dominion last year, okay? All right?
Old Dominion.
In fairness, okay? Yeah. They lost to ODU, but that's the team that I think could give Clemson the most trouble. So, yeah, man, I'm going to watch the Hokies. I'd rather watch that, actually.
All right. And for the Chaser, we have Northwestern at Stanford. We've already talked about what we think the game's going to be like. It's going to be interesting to see how Stanford sizes up this season. Northwestern, a lot of uncertainty. We'll see how that happens. And let's see, we'll move on. And, of course, the 7 p.m. Eastern is going to be the game of the week, Auburn at Oregon in the neutral site Cotton Bowl. We've already talked at length. I don't really think there's any more that needs to be said. I'm pretty sure everyone's going to watch that game.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Chaser after that is Virginia at Pittsburgh. I think it's going to be a pretty close to game right there.
Pitt always
not quite a rivalry, but it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
Pitt's always giving people problems. I like Pitt, but it'll be a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I probably will flip through it. I might be for something else, but it's funny because Pitt's always kind of had football, although they had a fantastic run in the 70s and they just disappeared. So maybe they magically reappear tomorrow. I don't know.
All right, and then our 10 o'clock Eastern, the shot is Fresno State at USC. And as someone who vaguely follows Fresno State, I think Fresno State's going to probably upset USC right here. USC is really kind of taking a tumble here.
What? Oh, yeah. Is there another Clark brother we don't know about?
Well, Fresno State, they're conference champions coming back. They've got, they won their bowl game. USC had, let's face it, a terrible season for USC standards. A lot of things didn't go well. So I think, Fresno State's going to be riding a high wave into this one. And I think a lot of people would like to watch this game with the prospect of a possible USC loss.
Yeah. Now, what's that last one we got?
And the chaser for that is New Mexico State at Washington State. Some good old Wazoo Pac-12 after dark.
Oh, we should have some interest in that as New Mexico State is on it next week.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about them, but I think it'll be a fun game to watch just to kind of get back in the swing of things, those late night games. Love them.
I'm really going to watch it mostly. I really don't watch it mostly for the Mike Leach
offense. It can be fun
offense.
because there's nothing else on. You know,
Mike Leach offense is gonna be fun. It's always fun.
It's always fun.
And with that closes our shots and chasers.
Before we go, did the flag ever get up at game day last week in Orlando?
I have no idea, actually.
I did not pay attention.
Did Old Crimson get up?
I'm sure it probably
someone had to have snuck it in.
Somebody leave us a comment and tell us whether or not that happened, and we'll check back in next week, huh?
I'm hearing a comment through the radio.
Oh, they had a poster.
Mm.
All right.
Well, I'm sorry, the streak is broken.
The flag.
The streak is broken. 143 straight game days, was it? Yeah. Something like that. All right. Well, very well then. Let's go this time. You guys have fun with your shots and chasers, okay? I wasn't intentionally leaving it off, but I thought at this point I need to cut myself off. So whatever. Okay?
I got you.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Thank you, guys. It's good talking.
That concludes our segment.